speak?
Kidwai?
You're not speaking, ma'am?
I will.
They will take the card afterwards.
Recording secretary.
3 o'clock for working people is very difficult.
Okay, Ms. Carlson.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I just briefly want to say I read the announcement in the paper, and that I also agree that the preschool needs to have a closer look taken by the redevelopment agency. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carlson. Mr. Kidwai?
I begin in the name of God, who is most beneficial, most merciful, Nikik Bar Kidwai, resident of Newberry Park and executive director of Concerned Citizens since '93, and fighting the former redevelopment agency since '93 when there was amendment to increase the debt to $750 million. Nobody believes it, but I was there. Congratulations, assistant manager. I wanted to speak on the minutes, but why spend so many cards? It's interesting that you have the what I call un-American minutes of this body. All you have is a name. There is no synopsis as to what was said. And I challenged the city council about this, and a few months ago they did bring a report, and their reasoning was, and you can go on the city council Moore Park website and you can see it in action, is that the video is available, so why do you need to have names on the written? But the other thing about this, and I'm very disappointed that former mayor and council member Jackie does not take the initiative, that you have the cameras right here. I don't think they are on. That the cost to turn them on is very minimal, and that you do not have the video available, and it's upon people like me to make the video available, which is not fair and complete abuse of the taxpayer service. Disappointed that some of the people are not here. It's on the agenda, but I just want to briefly touch on it, that the issue of having an attorney here and the cost is minimal. And it's, I found this tie, Mr. Darcy. This is my city council tie. It was misplaced. It's basically belongs to the city council, but I thought of bringing it here because it's so appropriate to you folks, is that see no citizen, no, don't respond to any citizen, don't care about any citizen, completely un-American. I mean, I'm limited to 3 minutes. I make some charges, the other young lady made something. It's supposed to be a dialogue. You should ask questions, especially the citizen member who has admitted that he doesn't know much about the redevelopment agency and still hasn't learned, is ask why. I mean, challenge me. Why do you say that? Why do you say that this tie represents this body, which is turned into a rubber stamp rather than looking out for the taxpayer interest? My point about the city, about the attorney's fees was, there's $20 million of low-hanging fruit which is available for the taxpayer in the state. And quickly, one is the West Side property, it's $5 million, which was done against the rules passed by the Senate by the time. The number two is the Lakeside property. I mean, zoning was done, changes were done after the date of the legislation. I don't have the numbers here. I have written about it. It's common knowledge. And then number three, the $6.5 million for the auto mall. What do you do? I mean,
Mr. Kidwai, you have to wrap it up.
Yeah, I'll just wrap it up. It's very sad to only give 3 minutes when the issues are so much. I'm talking about $20 million of taxpayer funds, the $6.5 million for the auto mall. The council, the staff did not do the job. They wasted my time also. They still kept the Discovery Center there. So what do? You have the
Mr.
deck there.
Mr. Kidwai, you'll have.
Yeah, I'm just wrapping it up. You have the debt there. What did you do? You have $207 million of debt for this agency. Take the money and retire the bonds. That is the solution. And nobody. I'm being challenged about the time. You should ask me questions so that there's no time and I can answer it. But you won't.
Thank you, Mr. Kidwai. All right, action items, item 7A, transfer of government purpose assets of former redevelopment agency to the city of Thousand Oaks, and that's revised per Department of Finance. Mr. Prescott, our Community Development Director, is going to be doing the presentation.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. In September, the Oversight Board approved Resolution 2013-04, which identified various assets of the former redevelopment agency that are being used for governmental purposes. We forwarded that list to the State Department of Finance with a request that those be transferred to the City of Thousand Oaks per provision of the dissolution legislation that allows that. And in June, I think it was around the 11th, the State Department of Finance sent us a letter, it's attachment 4, approving most of those transfers, but calling out both of the theaters here at City Hall, the parking garage here at City Hall, and a slice of the child care center over on Canal School Road. Saying that those were not exclusively used for governmental purposes, and therefore, rather than using the streamlined approach for government purpose assets, they needed to be addressed by the successor agency and the Oversight Board in the context of our long-range property management plan. That doesn't mean that at the end of the day they won't be transferred. It just means that we have to do more homework, if you will, as part of the normal preparation of that plan and resubmit them. So, pursuant to the law, we needed to bring you back a revised resolution excluding those properties for your adoption, and then we need to send that back up to Sacramento, and if they okay at this time, then those properties will be transferred to the cities, the remaining properties. And I'll be happy to answer any questions. We have a resolution for your adoption. We recommend you do so.
Do we have questions?
I have one question regarding the remaining properties. They're kind of a crossover to the next item, but the remaining properties are listed on the other items. Is that the 5 properties that are listed on page 60 overall?
Yes, those are the 5 properties that will be the subject of the long-range property management plan.
And it includes the 2 properties denied by the state?
Right, the parking garage, and then the state treated the 2 theaters as a single property.
Do you have any other questions? All right, then we have a speaker on the item, Mr. Kidwai. Mr. Kidwai, I still need you to fill out a card for public comment item 6, agenda item 6.
Nick Kidwai, representing Concerned Citizens, Thousand Oaks, Honorable Chair, Oversight Board members. First of all, I want to thank you for ignoring me during public comments and probably ignoring me right now also. If that's your prerogative. I would like to clarify, I don't know if you have the newspaper article from the Star on this, and as one who has been involved in this thing since the early inception, it was again reiterated that this was a $63 million project, and the city manager would love it. He wasn't here, but you're forgetting the free money. The free money was the $30 million redevelopment bonds that bought did the infrastructure improvements and bought the property from a refugee Jewish Iranian person under the threat of eminent domain. That's the history of this thing. And even before that, which is very important, is the citizens did not want it. Their ballots were rejected in a partisan manner by the clerk. And then so-called ballot has been used to build this, and this is what the DOF should know about, is that there would be no general funds or taxpayer funds used for running this. That was the promise. To this day, no one on the dais at the city council or even over here has had the courage or the common decency to apologize to the citizens that we were sold a pipe dream, that this was a Mickey Mouse Disneyland thing. There's no theater that I know of that does not run on a subsidy. And instead of coming out and openly putting some money on the table to subsidize it, it's gone the other way. Initially, we were losing about $500,000 in operations. Now, $2 million is being spent off taxpayer funds, and DOF should really look into this from the general fund to renovate the theaters. And while I'm a big fan of DOF and have made some friends there over the year, this idea of selling these two theaters is, once again, how far removed bureaucrats are from reality. This would be yet another hit on the taxpayers, and there should be other solutions. And like I had talked about in the public comments, there's $20 million of low-hanging fruit there. That's what the DOF should be attacking. The city manager had vile comments about Sacramento and how the money is going in a bottomless pit. This is again and again. I haven't had the time, but it has been said that $4 billion of redevelopment funds have been distributed to school districts, college districts, for the courts already. And so the DOF is doing a good job. Some of the redevelopment agents, the oversight boards are doing anything. It's about time that Mr. Dursey and other people came up and stepped up to the plate and took the correct action on behalf of the taxpayers. That's what the fiduciary responsibility is. That's what the oath you took. And I appreciate you letting me speak. And thank you again for not asking any questions, because that would stir the pot too much.
Thank you, Mr. Kidwai. All right, do we have a motion?
I move we approve the resolution submitted.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Just one quick comment before we go.
Okay.
First of all, just for the record, I've looked very carefully at the amended group of properties, and I don't see any properties here that would be subject to sale to anybody, that they would pay for them, that anyone would want to maintain a private walkway or street improvements or anything like this that would generate funds that would help to retire debts of the former redevelopment agency any earlier. So I feel very confident in supporting this, that this is not in any way an attempt by the city to take on properties that otherwise might have some private purpose or private value.
Vote. All in favor? Item 7D, long-range property management plan, consultant agreement with HDL Corn and Cone. Mr. Prescott.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the board. The next task, major task that we will have in the redevelopment agency dissolution process is to prepare the long-range property management plan. We have identified in our report the 5 remaining properties that will be dealt with in that plan. The state has specific criteria and guidelines for the composition of the plan and the options that a successor agency has regarding the properties of the former redevelopment agency, and criteria for retaining them, for selling them, and otherwise disposing of them. So it's a somewhat technical plan. It may require expertise in terms of property valuation and strategies for development and or redevelopment. And we have recommended through this report and the resolution attached the engaging the firm of HDL Corn and Cone, which the city has had has done a lot of work for the city, and they are very familiar with the properties. We are recommending that the Oversight Board allow the successor agency to enter the attached agreement for purposes of helping us prepare that long-range property management plan. We will probably be bringing that back to the board sometime in the fall. Certainly, I don't think any earlier than your September meeting, and more likely the November or October meeting. But we would like to get them on board and begin preparation of that in the near future. So we'd recommend you adopt the resolution attached to the report.
Questions? Mr. Bloom?
Is this company currently contracted with the city?
Yes, they are.
Do you think that could be a conflict of interest? I assume the city would have some sort of interest in some of these properties. I guess that if they work for the city and the city wanted to.
Yeah, the city definitely has an interest in the properties. You know, obviously we use the theaters and the parking structure. We own the land under the lakes, and we own the child care center. I don't see really the conflict of interest though with that firm working. The type of work they've done for the city, I think, is mainly auditing work. Is that correct?
Yeah, property tax, sales tax analysis.
Yeah. So we would be looking to them to provide those economic valuation type services for us to go into the plan.
Did you have any other questions, Mr. Bloom?
No.
Are there other firms that could have done this also?
Yeah, there are.
And how did we decide on this one?
Well, I think because of their familiarity with the properties and their long track record of working with the city.
And there's no requirement to go out for a RFP with this?
No.
Question, if you're working a contract with an outside firm, would it be done internally?
We would. I think where we might not have the expertise would be in the property valuation area. And also, I think the benefit of hiring a consultant to do this type of work is they have familiarity with greater familiarity with what's going on statewide because they work with other clients. I know that this firm is also working with the city of Oxnard and other cities. And Mr. Korn, by the way, is in the audience if you'd like to ask him any questions. They bring that expertise and probably a little bit more knowledge than we have in-house of what DOF is looking for and the type of analysis that needs to be done. But we will actually be doing a lot of the legwork in terms of assembling the information about each of the properties, and they would be doing some more of the analytic work and valuation work.
I guess from my standpoint, that would, you know, if there's gonna be a conflict of interest at all, it'd be a conflict anyway. I mean, as far as if city staff is gonna do the work, there's a potential inherent conflict anyway. And I think there's other RDAs that city staff or the RDA successor agency is gonna do it.
Madam Chair, if I could weigh in, I was looking at the scope of work on the contract, and if you look at the attachment number 2, page 1 of 2, on that item, when you look at the tasks, it's pretty analytical work. Determine the date of acquisition, the purpose the property is acquired, parcel data, valuing the property, estimating cash flows.
Page 73.
Yeah, page 73, sorry, Virginia. So that all looks, you know, quite technical and professional as opposed to making any policy recommendations about what to do with it. And honestly, if there was a conflict question, it's not really between the successor agency and the consultant. It's really the inherent potential between the oversight board and the successor agency. And that's really where any struggle comes. But that's going to be on the policy side of how to propose to dispose of the property and what the law requires. They're really developing data and analysis to help
the assessor agency and the oversight board make a policy decision of how to dispose, to come up with a plan for disposition of the properties.
Thank you. All right, we have one speaker, Mr. Kidwai.
Mitnick City Manager of Newbury Park, Director, concerned citizens of Thousand Oaks. Sorry for the delay. It's absolutely disgusting that we have all this fixed expenses of all these nice cameras and everything, that the video is not available, and hopefully somebody in the Department of Finance and will forward this and have the controller or the governor look at the video and the paperwork for this agency and really put it under the microscope, which it should have been a long time ago, because there's a lot of, like I said 20 years ago, hanky-panky. That's the word I used and got in trouble with the city manager, but I think that's a nice English term. It's interesting that, thank you for having one packet here. I did not print it out, even though I read it. It's very, I don't know who you are trying to fool. Is that your packets, they are portrait on the website, but then the spreadsheets are also like that, so you cannot read them, and so you have to juggle them. I don't know if it's done on purpose because you folks get the printed one, but for people like us who are trying to work on it, and I have given the link to some people, and that's what they told me also, and they just give up, and that's I guess the reason for doing it. I have no comments about the school property, and the DOF keeps changing the rules, I guess, or whatever. I was told, because I've been added, that the west side property and the lakes zoning, as well as even the auto mall changes were done after the date, after the due date when you were not supposed, the city was not supposed to take anything. In a nutshell, the west side property, which some other people have done, is that there was money in the bank account, and it was just basically grabbing $5 million so that it would not go to the state. And there is no public use for that project. Museum is proposed, but it could be, and it was originally proposed in front of this building, and the DOF should really completely renege on that and get the city to use their general funds for the $5 million that they have spent so far. East side property, while we are opposed to selling the theaters because we would get pennies on the dollar, the lakeside, coming from the business world, you cut your losses. That's what the city has not done unless it's free money. That's what the esteemed management and people in the council think this is free money. But the free money has come to an end. The party is over. Even though we have people getting $40,000, $50,000 raises at the expense of the taxpayers, but that will catch up with you folks sometimes. But what should be done is it should be sold, and then there's one part of the council that was for the Caruso project. They're still in the majority. There was another that denied a GEMCO over here that are against growth. What is needed is that those buildings need to be raised, and maybe a Costco or whatever, but a bigger project that fits the area, that will make money. It should be zoned for that, and it will bring a lot more money, and that would actually revitalize the boulevard.
Mr. Kidwai, we have to wrap it up.
Yeah, and I mean, you have the money, but no money for these lights, Oh, what a shame. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Mr. Kidwai. Okay, can we have a motion?
Move approval of the contract.
Second.
Motion authorizing the contract.
All right, vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Jeff, just a couple other quick questions on this. Just in terms of wanting to think ahead about when this consultant study is done, you know, kind of what first of all, my first question is as this oversight board, the authority of the oversight board with respect to these questions ultimately is to make what judgment?
Well, you have to approve the long-range property management plan before we send it to Department of Finance. So that plan will include the proposed disposition or use of all of those 5 properties, and you'll have the ability to weigh in on it and change it.
And then within the consultant's report, one of the things that I'd really like to see and like to see us well educated on would be what are the criteria for determining whether an asset should go to the successor agency or whether it should be sold to retire debts and things like that. So we have, you know, real good knowledge of what are the benchmarks that we're supposed to look at with respect to making this determination before we're asked to make the determination.
Understood, and those benchmarks are in the law, and they're in the guidelines that DOF have presented on their website, which are basically a carbon copy of the law. There's very little, if any, detail beyond what the law says, and if you look at attachment 4 on our first report, I think it was attachment, no, I'm sorry, that was the letter. Attachment 2 to this report, which is your packet pages 75 and 76. That's what DOF is telling agencies throughout the state. And Item 1 is really an inventory of the properties with a lot of information about them, and then Item 2 is the direction we have from the state of California on what we're supposed to do with those properties and what our options are. And so our job in the plan will be to look at those individual properties and put them into these categories in Item 2 there, and be able to justify that to you and then ultimately to the State Department of Finance. And if there is any more guidance that comes out either from DOF directly or from what we can glean from their review of other long-range property management plans that may be a little bit ahead of ours in the pipeline and how they react to different situations, then we'll definitely throw that in the mix and let you know about it.
All right, item 8A is an informational item, update of status of California Department of Finance review of previous oversight board actions. And Mr. Prescott?
Yes, just real briefly, we have three of your previous actions we'd like to give you an update on, and take them a little bit out of order, and I'm going to talk about the help loan and the transfer of housing assets, and then Mr. Norman will talk about the other funds due diligence review. The help loan, as you recall, we had an early payoff offer from the Department of Housing and Community Development with an interest discount, and DOF ultimately did approve that. We made the payment on July 1st, paid off the loan and accrued interest in the amount of $1,849,000 and change. And by taking advantage of that early discount, we did get a discount. Early payoff, we got a discount in interest of $134,000, which is money that will ultimately flow to the taxing entities. So that is completed. And the second one, housing assets. The formal transfer of the housing assets to the city was approved by the Oversight Board on May 22nd at your last meeting. We submitted it to DOF. They want to review it, and they have until September 5th. So I think we won't hear back from them until, did I say December? September 5th. We probably will hear from them just before then, and we'll report that to the board. And then regarding the due diligence review on our other funds other than housing funds, Mr. Norman will update you.
Thank you, John. And Chair, members of the board, on June 12th, Scott Mitnick, myself, and Norm Hoffman, who is legal counsel to the Auto Mall, met with Justin Howard and Chris Hill of the Department of Finance in a process that is known as a meet and discuss regarding the auto mall funds that were at issue from the non-housing DER. At that time, we were told that DOF was going to take another look at some of the issues in terms of making the auto mall whole for the amount of money they put into the project over the years, and to date, we have not received a response. I have emailed DOF earlier this week, and apparently Mr. Howard is on vacation, but I anticipate getting a response from him shortly, and we'll keep you updated as to what the response is.
Chris, refresh my memory, is the original issue was using former redevelopment funds to follow through with the auto mall agreement and do the improvements, right?
Yeah, there was $7.6 million of funds in an escrow that would require both the successor agency and the auto mall to authorize the expenditure from. And at this point, the auto mall has indicated that they are not willing to hand that money over to the state.
And because the state has said, no, you can't, you didn't have a defining contract for various reasons. So that whole issue is still up in the air with the DOF.
Yes, at this time, that's correct.
And at this point in time, the auto mall folks are establishing their concerns and their damages, as well as the city as a successor agency.
Yeah, and it's really the auto mall that's leading the charge on this. I mean, they claim hard damages of $500,000 that they can substantiate, and they're requesting that they be made whole through, this is kind of a settlement discussion, this meet and discuss process, and so the meeting was along those lines and trying to make the auto mall whole, and we just haven't heard back from them on their decision.
Okay.
Anything else? All right, then let's move on.
Madam Chair?
Oh,
A little bit of clarification or a reminder for some of you. Initially, the State Department of Finance did indeed say that the project was kosher, it was good to go. And then, because of the delay in terms of the construction starting, they said that it wasn't done within that one-year time frame. So just a point of clarification there. And that's kind of the challenge. And the delay was because we were waiting for clarity from this whole process. So that's why we're at where we're at.
thank you, Mr. Mitnick. Item 8B, and that is the grand jury report on the Lakes project, and Mr. Norman's going to be presenting.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. On June 24th, the Oversight Board received a request from the Ventura County Grand Jury to respond to a report entitled Thousand Oaks RDA/City, the Lakes Project. It should be attached to your packet. And at this time, I'm going to hand over the discussion to your legal counsel, Mr. Fletcher, to discuss what is the grand jury report, what are the obligations of the Oversight Board to respond to it, and what options does the Oversight Board have to respond to it. So, Mr. Fletcher.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Madam Chair, members of the board. I don't know if you've been involved in reviewing grand jury reports in the past. They're a very unique animal. In this case, you don't know you'll never know when you get these reports what generated, but some complaint or an issue was raised last year with the grand jury that they chose to take this on as a project. Sometimes timing is important because, you know, a year or so ago, whenever they may have been assembling these projects, the issue about disposition of this property may have been much more up in the air or uncertain. In any event, if you've read the report, they did an analysis, it makes factual findings, and they make a recommendation. The bottom line of the recommendation is they recommend that when it comes time to dispose of the former agency's assets, that the agency sell the Lakes parcel. Unlike a lot of other grand jury reports, this isn't investigating a process or not criticizing a procedure. They're not looking into the practices of an agency. They're merely analyzed the issue about, or attempted to analyze the issue of disposition of the lake's development, the residual agency interest in the lake development, and made a recommendation. Under the state law governing grand juries, the grand jury can request the subjects of the investigation to respond. While it's not mandatory, it's a very strong practice if entities have been asked to respond to a grand jury report to file some sort of response. There's some of the question whether the oversight board is such an entity that could. Now, my analysis is that since the board is intended to have an independent status, they have approval rights over what the successor agency does. I think it's sufficiently autonomous that if it wanted to respond in any fashion to this report, the board could do so. Normal practice is that the staff, city staff, the agency staff, prepares some sort of responses, submits them to the board for comment. I believe that's what's going to happen with the city comments. If you look at the grand, most of the responses are requested of the city to all the other findings and the one recommendation. For the record, they want a response to findings 12 and 13, but there is no finding 13, so it's really finding 12, which is that the oversight board is responsible for determining the disposition of former assets. Yes, I don't think that's a very controversial issue. And then there's the recommendation that they sell off the east and west properties. This is really premature. Again, this issue was presented to the grand jury some time ago. As you all know, the successor redevelopment process has been very, very fluid. Sitting here today, as you just took an action to approve to take this property off the list of assets to be transferred for governmental purposes. So if that was at one time a controversial question, it's moot now. You've also approved hiring of the consultant who's prepared the long-term property management plan, which is necessary, which you must adopt before you can make any decision about disposition of the property. So one response could simply be that this responding is premature. We haven't made a decision. We can't make a decision. You can't even take up the management plan until you've got your certificate of completion, which we don't even have yet. Alternatively, you could respond now to say, thank you very much, we'll take your recommendations into consideration when we go to consider the plan. Very straightforward. You could also, your response could be, thank you very much, we don't really have much to say other than thank you. Perhaps you want to direct staff to prepare something. I think the council's going to be taking up their recommendations early in September. Responses are due if you want to file a response by September 22nd, so we would have to have another meeting unless you want. You could take an action today. You could direct staff to prepare something for your, maybe with the chair's final approval, if you want to do something today with it. Otherwise, you'd have to call a meeting before September 22nd. Your next meeting otherwise would be later in September.
We can take an action today?
Sure, it's on your agenda. So if it was, for example, if you want, you could discuss it today and you could say, pick a choice, say our response ought to be, thank you very much, we appreciate it, and we will consider your input. You could direct staff to prepare a final version and delegate to the chair the authority to sign that.
All right.
If you want to do that, or you could simply wait until staff has prepared the rest of the responses and perhaps have an entire response put back on your agenda at a special meeting, either late August, early September.
I like your first suggestion, but why don't we, thank you, we'll consider your input, but why don't we go through, does anybody else have some?
Well, I would be willing to make a motion, or support somebody else's motion, that we authorize staff at this meeting to respond. I think it's appropriate and a courtesy that we respond. I wouldn't want to ignore it. I think that legal counsel has already got the right response to finding 12, which is yes, we agree. That's pretty simple. And I think with the recommendation, I think something to the effect that says that the oversight board has authorized a consultant study into the issue of the disposition of the properties, and will follow, the recommendations of the consultants, and the applicable law to reach a recommendation. Will take the grand jury's recommendation into consideration. Something to that effect, and we're done.
I'll I'll second that. I think that would be my preference also, is to have a response in that regard, saying, hey, we're going through the process.
Right. And
We have to follow the process, and we're doing it.
Okay, and then, but we will consider your recommendation.
We're taking their recommendation into consideration.
Okay.
Madam Chair, if I may, over here, we're discussing the fact that Mr. Norman's reminding me that state law requires the board to take all actions by resolution. You can't do it by motion, so I don't know what the Thousand Oaks practice is about delegating preparation of a resolution. I have in the past. That the board articulates the findings and direct the staff and the chair to finalize a resolution and adopt it. But if you want to be by the book, we would probably have to call a meeting before September 22nd to bring back the resolution, because you must act by resolution.
Okay, so if we want to be by the book, we have to have another meeting.
Yes.
Well, we always want to be by the book.
So I think we're going to have to, then I think we probably
Okay.
look at your calendar and pick September 11th would be.
Do we have to pick the date right now?
No.
Okay.
No, you have to pick
We've
No, it
got the
would
date on the
be-
calendar, let's just do the August 26th or whatever it is.
Yeah, you have that August date, and of course, we were recommending canceling that. One option might be to have a special meeting earlier in September in lieu of your regular September meeting. I'm trying to not have two meetings, because we do need to have a September meeting for you to adopt your next ROPS. That has to be done before October 1st, so we're hoping between now and October 1st only have one meeting. And we might be able to combine the two in the middle of September. What we're checking on now is whether there's a conflict with the League of Cities annual conference.
We would prefer not to waste our time with those.
Yeah.
Because,
You know, they request, another thought is that they request a response within 90 days, but there's no requirement that we do so. We could send something to them saying the response is being prepared at the direction of the oversight board, and they'll be approving the response at their meeting on September such and such.
You're right, that would be, that would be fine too.
Yeah.
You're right, you mean, maybe direct staff to send a letter saying that you'll be getting a response after your next meeting in September. It's 4 days after the deadline, yes. There are no sanctions for failing to respond.
We discussed it at an agendized meeting. We gave direction to staff, and we're going to approve it at our next scheduled meeting. And we don't make 90 days, but I think we meet the intent of the law.
That's a very good point, yes.
all right, then, and what is the date of that meeting then, I'm sorry?
It's on the
September
agenda.
25th.
September
And
20th.
actually, there is an intervening meeting that we're recommending you cancel, but we probably wouldn't be prepared to bring back the response by that date anyway.
So I guess I didn't make a motion the first time, so let me make a motion. The motion is that we direct staff, or we direct legal counsel in this case.
I'll work with staff.
Yeah,
I
we
mean,
direct
so
legal
staff does
counsel
the
to
paperwork.
develop a response to the grand jury's recommendation that we will approve at our meeting on September 25th.
And if I may ask, just to clarify the motion, and then that the essence of the response is a acknowledgement and thank you, and we will consider it.
Yeah, acknowledgement and the process, and a brief information about the process we'll take to make the determination.
Got it, perfect.
Okay, and we do have one speaker on the item before we.
Lee Kidwai, resident of Newberry Power Director, Sun City, Southern Oaks, Honorable Chair, Oversight Board members, if you're going by the books, you would not have a motion on the floor until the public testimony is given, and the motion should be withdrawn. If I might ask, might be out of order, but I've always been curious and didn't get a chance to ask before. You approved the agenda in the beginning of the meeting, whereas in the city council does not do that, and I think that's because of changes not following Robert Rules of Order or something like that. Just a minor thing. I'm glad that you have a outside counsel, decently paid, but we, the taxpayers, are not looking for just a nice thank you note. I mean, I have thank you notes in my car. I can give you very nicely printed. That's not what the grand jury wants. We would like to have a plan of selling this nefarious money-losing thing. That's what you have the time for, to find out what would be involved. one of the things that has been said is that, well, Caruso will sue the banks of the city. Well, the RDA is gone, so what are the legalities of you reneging on it? And even though the grand jury had some access to some county resources, but they completely dropped the ball because they did not know that the actions taken in the last year about changing this to a restaurant only and some other things that were on the agenda were completely against the law. And what I've been told, and I'm pursuing it, is that the controller is supposed to look at that. This was outside the preview of the DOF, and that's one of the reasons they did not look on it, at it. They need to look on it and get rid of it because what's the cause? What's the reason? And I'm disappointed that the college rep is not here, that the school, this money when it is sold will go back just like the $4 billion that has to the local schools, to the community colleges, to help run the courts, rather than fatten the pockets of this developer who came in a brand new Rolls Royce when he signed a black convertible. When he signed this document here, I saw him in that. And so this is welfare for the rich, and I guess when we had the money, we should have done it. The reports, I mean, this paper is able to get some of these money, but but the annual report that Caruso submitted to the city council, it was not even put on the agenda, it was put in council mail. So nobody knew what was coming. I am one of the few people that asked for it, and I haven't brought it back, but I got it back redacted like it was some kind of national security everything. So government should stay out of these kind of things which are not really in their purview. Whenever you do it, it seems like a good idea, but Mr. Public Representative, they end up spending $100 for something that would cost $5, $6, $10. So I'm disappointed. I mean, if you don't want to do it, hopefully you will get a stick from the state to sell this, because you should at least do your due diligence and find out what is involved in selling it.
Thanks, Mr. Kidwai. All right, do we have any, we'll move forward with that, we have direction there. And then, any board comments?
We haven't voted on the motion.
Are we supposed to?
Sure.
Do we have to go for a vote even though it's an informational item?
Yeah, I'd recommend you go ahead and just make the motion for that to be done.
Okay. All right, so second that? All right, all in favor? Aye. All right, board comments?
Just one. I want to remind the speaker, the public speaker, that in the case of K-12 school districts in California, all of the money that goes to the school district, for example, if the redevelopment agency was to send $40 million to the school district as a local taxing agency, which by the way I think is a splendid idea. It's offset. It offsets state aid. So there's not, and I know that's not true for all the other agencies at the table here, but for the school district, as a representative of schools, that money's not coming to the school district. That money is in effect going to the state because it offsets state aid through the state finance formulas. So as the school district representative, I'm always looking at a little larger picture than just money going to the agencies. It's what is the potential, if it's discretionary to us, and if it's legal to us to make a particular decision, then what's in the best interest of the community, because it's not going to have a positive economic effect on the school district. It is going to swell the state's general fund. And so just for the record, those are the things that I look at in evaluating this, because it's not having a direct positive economic benefit on a K-12 school district. It just offsets state aid.
All right, any other comments? Then we are going to adjourn, cancel the meeting of August 28th and adjourn to the meeting of September 25th.